Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sip&Awe, where God puts the on awesome. I'm your host, Brandon Windsor, and this is the continuation with my buddy, Charles. But before we get into the show, okay, I have to say something. We have a very special guest in the house, and it is our first-time listeners. If that's you, let's give you a round of applause. One second. Oh, yeah, there it is. All right. Come on now. If this is your first time listening, I'm just super thankful that you decided to join the Sip&Awe family. If you don't know how we do it here at Sip&Awe, don't worry. We will walk you through it on our YouTube channel. If you haven't looked at that already, you can like and subscribe on there. But you can also listen to Sip&Awe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And don't forget to share with your friends and family so they can see what is happening here at Sip&Awe. And we also have some merch. Yeah, you heard me right. We have merch. And so if you guys are interested in looking good, you can go to the link in the description below. You can buy some merch. But don't forget to donate and to buy me a cup of coffee because I'm really thirsty. And when you guys buy me a cup of coffee, I don't get thirsty because I have my cup of coffee. But guys, let's get in there for part 2 with my buddy, Charles. Give it up for Charles for part 2. Yeah.
What's up, y'all?
Yo. All right, let's do the sippy. You ready, Charles?
Yep.
Yeah, you drank. Yeah, you got your dirt. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. And thank you, Lord, for the day that He has made for you and me. 1, 2, 3. Boom. You know, every time I do that, I feel like should my guests repeat after me, or should they say it with me? Like, I don't know.
You gotta send the script to us if you want to say it.
I should. Yeah.
No. Well, I guess one's gonna assume that they listen to the show, and one's gonna assume that they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
kind of one of those things.
You know,
do we just branch off? Okay, how much of this show is questions that we shouldn't ask? So, one thing I've been reading, this is the reason why, is because, like, to be honest, Brandon, when I come on something like this, I think like, the questions have to be kind of nicety, and it kind of has to be fluffy, and because ultimately you're not in the weeds. That's my assumption. Right. But yeah. Like, I was reading this book, which I talked about, last week / 5 minutes ago, Scaling People. And in the book, she said that one of her major points as a leader is that she says the thing that she feels like she can't say. She always does. And for me, there are so many things I feel like I can't say. Like, I'm about to say it. I want to say it. And I'm like, I can't say that. And so I'm wondering, like, can we ask like some in the weed questions and just get into the nasty?
Here's my heart. Okay. My heart is to just really just dive deep, literally into anything. And so this is not a fluffy podcast. This is not a like, good morning, everyone. Grab your coffee and let's talk about Jesus. Like, this is let's talk about gay stuff. As we were kind of texting yesterday, it's like, yes, we can talk about those things. And I want to open the door for literally anyone to talk about those things, So yeah, go ahead. You can do whatever you want.
Okay, I have a crazy question. So every single week, me and my wife, we have a weekly meeting. And in it, right now, we on our wall, we have a vision board for us personally, and then for the family. And then we have goals and house habits. So like, house habits is we have to no phones after 10:30. We go to bed at 11:30. We have vision for our lives, what we want to do personally, and then we keep each other accountable every week. And then we have emotional questions. One of the questions is, what if you had a temptation to hide? Fire question. Because what you want to hide is what you feel shame about. And what you feel shame about will almost always be the root of some big problems if you do decide to hide it. So that's not the question. I'm not going to ask that question. But here's another question I was thinking about.
Okay.
What parts of your life are you not proud of right now?
What parts of my life that I'm not proud of right now? Ooh.
If this is too honest in the weeds, you let me know, dude.
I'll be honest, Charles. I'll be honest. I don't even think this would get me in trouble because I don't really think a lot of people would listen, Something that I'm not proud of in my life right now is sometimes I'm not who I say that I am, or I don't live out what I preach.
Totally.
There are some times where I'm on stage and a big individual that I follow his name is Michael Koulianos. He's from Jesus Image. And he is madly in love with Jesus. And I've kind of fallen to this thing ever since I've been in Go, where I would hear a one-liner and I'll use it. And so sometimes when I minister, it's like, you can't necessarily do that. And then like when I leave, I'm like, I don't know what that was, because
Mm,
I've been struggling with this. And so and I don't like preach at people and like what I'm saying is I sometimes I catch myself not being authentic when I minister. Like if you looked
totally.
at my life behind closed doors, it'd be like, didn't you just say like that's not biblical? So that is probably one of the biggest things I'm not really necessarily proud of in
Do you
my
think it's
life right
because
now.
when you're in the moment, you're like, you're just like, are you consciously thinking like while you're preaching, this isn't me, but I'm going to say it? Or is it more like you're in the moment, it gets regurgitated, and then you're dealing with the backlash emotionally after the fact?
The second part, yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And so because I've been really dealing with like the scripture that says people are going to come to me and say, Lord, Lord, we did all these things in your name, and Jesus says, depart from me, for I never knew you. Like I have
That's
this
such a heavy
conscious
scripture.
like thought of like, dude, I don't want to be the one who leads the young adults group, has a Christian podcast, who does all the quote unquote Christian things. I get to heaven, I'm like, Lord, I did all these things, man. He's like, dude, depart from me, for I never knew you. And so
Mm,
like, and not that I'm ever going to be perfect. I know that I'm going to sin. I know that I'm going to have make mistakes in
mm.
my life, but it's like it's just a conscious thing where it's like I want a real true genuine relationship with the Lord. And sometimes I'm not perfect. And so,
Yeah.
yeah. What about you?
Well, can I ask one addendum before we switch?
Yes.
Okay, so the last part of that scripture, do you know it? It says, depart from me, those who
No, I don't know.
practice lawlessness.
Mhm.
Like I think one of the key ingredients is that, a life that is, when you say the word practice, it means habitual. When you
Mhm.
practice baseball, you do it all the time. You
Mhm.
do it all the time. You love baseball, and it's habitual. And so to be honest, a lot of times I've been in the same space. So there was a time, like, and you knew me from Go, or you knew me from whatever. You knew me from
Go.
our past ministry,
Yeah.
and dude, I was dogmatic about preaching to the homeless people and stuff, and I stopped. I totally had been afraid. I fear had become so palpable in my life that I would begin to sweat about ministering to people. And there's no way that that's just like random or like it had to be like somebody's coming on me, something. The devil's trying to stop something because I was so afraid, dude. It was like palpable, and that scripture because it says that there are places in hell reserved for cowards, and
Mhm.
it's right next to homosexuals, adulterers, murderers, and I'm like, well, really, Lord? I mean, like, come on, like, it's not that bad. But the truth is, like, apparently, it's the same thing.
Mhm.
To him, if you don't do that thing in which you should do because you're scared, that cowardice at the core of it, like that is something that he doesn't apparently think is funny at all, or in any way he takes lightly. And so when I was reading those scriptures, I would think to myself, I need to do this or else a bad thing will happen to me. And to
Mhm.
be honest, it only steeped me deeper into that bad thing. And I actually was worse every day. And for some reason, I thought that if I knew where I was headed in a bad way, that somehow it would make my actions better. And it never did. It made
Mhm.
it worse and it made me more afraid. And I never, but I remember I was listening to a John Maxwell podcast, and in it, um, one guy says, it's John Maxwell's number two. His name's Mark Cole, and I've been on this big leadership kick. And he said, "Fear can be a friend or a foe. Let it be a friend." And I was like, "Wait, okay, maybe I need to take a step back here." And I realized bravery doesn't feel like bravery; it feels like fear. Because if you were really fearless in that situation, you wouldn't need bravery. See,
Mhm.
bravery is making a choice in the face of a feeling that isn't aligned with it. So it's like this: people want to think that bravery feels like bravery, but most of the time it feels like fear. People, when they make a choice for faith, they want it to feel strong, but most of the time it can feel insecure. And
Mhm.
I just think it's so interesting in my own life that, I had some times in my own life when I was quoting the same scripture. And what I noticed was when I let go of where I was going to go for wrongdoing and I found tools for what was happening in my life. And I started to say this when I was driving Uber. When fear would come on to me, I would say irrational fear means do it, and a irrational fear means don't. So if it's irrational, it makes no sense. It's like, wait, I'm afraid to tell this person about Jesus. It's irrational. If I'm afraid to jump off a cliff, that's rational. Let's definitely
Mm,
listen to that one.
yeah.
And I kept repeating that and just muttering it every time the fear would come on. And when that fear came, it in my head it became a go sign instead of a stop sign. So I'm like, oh,
Mm,
rational fear. That means do it. And you can't do this across the board. Like sometimes you'll do some crazy crap, but for this instance with the Lord, it had changed the way I felt. Fear was a stop sign before, and so I just started ministering to people. And so anyway, I wanted to say that because
that's
I had
cool.
a season in my own life where I was just like, man, I'm straight up going to heck, bro. Like I'm going to his hell, dude.
Yeah.
Just because I thought the same thing. And what's interesting is it's those who practice lawlessness, and so it's
Yeah.
definitely when you have a lifestyle of it and not
Right.
just like feeling bad about it. So I didn't mean to
Yeah. No, that's great.
side note
That's
that, but
that's huge. Do you think that ties into the fear of the Lord or the fear of God?
totally different. The
Okay.
fear of the Lord to me is you died for me on a cross. How could I ever? How could I even touch it with a 10-foot pole to put you back on that cross and betray what you did for me? I,
Mm,
I respect you way too much, and I wouldn't ever touch that with a 10-foot pole. That's I believe the beginning of the fear of the Lord, and I believe the end of it looks more like a real stillness. Like there is an eternity in the balance, and there is eternal judgment. Let's be wise about our decisions and our corridors here, and back up a
mm,
little bit. So
that's good.
yeah, I think you're right. I think it does play into the fear of the Lord, which I think is honestly one of my low points. Um, I don't think I don't know actually. I don't know. Now we're getting into the weeds. I don't know about this one. Okay, what was the question? Ask me the question.
Something that you're not proud of in your life
Okay,
right now.
this is a tough one. Um, I'm just going to get into the nasties. One thing that I'm not proud of right now is, I guess there's a few. The reason I come up with these questions because I want to talk about it, but I find that I don't have. Sometimes I'm not taking the strength to open up those conversations to people. And so I bring up these questions and I'll make a meeting for it. And then that question will force me to come out of my shell because I'm finding I don't have the impetus or desire to actually talk about tough things. It's like really
Hmm.
sad, kind of. I
Yeah.
should just say it.
Yeah.
But so one thing I'm not proud of, oh my gosh, probably, my time spent with Erica in a really meaningful, and the honest truth is this is really sad, okay? But I feel like I want to tell Erica that I'm in love with her more and not just that I love her, but I'm scared to do it. I'm
Like,
afraid. Now we're in the weeds. Now we are in the weeds because I don't want to get hurt. I don't like vulnerability. It makes me feel exactly like the word says. And in that, I'm not a huge fan of being vulnerable. And I don't like giving power over my emotions. I don't like being, uh, I'll cry before the Lord and I'm genuine. And that soft side is there, but with no one
mm,
else. And I'm afraid to get hurt. I don't want to
yeah.
get hurt by people, and I don't want to let my emotions breathe because if I let them breathe, they're going to start growing. And when they start growing, there's a lot of opportunity for people to let you down. And to be honest, it's kind of a sad life.
Yeah.
Like just to constantly be protecting your own back instead of loving people fully.
Hey guys, I just want to come on here real quick and say thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you have a friend or a family member that you know will enjoy this episode, stop what you're doing and send it to them right now. If this is a message that they need, or if you know that they'll just enjoy it, send it their way so we can keep growing the Sip&Awe family. All right, guys, thank you for sharing. Let's get back to the episode. Do you think that kind of gave birth to in your past, or you've just always been like that, or have you just been hurt by so many people? It's just kind of like this way you handle your emotions now.
I think it's twofold. I did get hurt in the beginning of our relationship, and we've said this publicly. Erica was talking to another guy,
Hmm.
and basically this huge thing came out. I was like, did all this stuff and found some stuff, and she's been talking and meeting up with another dude. And it rocked me. I waited 5 years to date. I'm like, I'm not going to date anybody. I date her, boom, she's with another guy at the same time, and I'm like, whoa, the bell's been rung, boys. And I was just freaked out. And to be honest, it was twofold. One, it was because I was I got hurt and I backed up. And two, because all the little moments in which I could share where I was at, I backed up. It was like a slow choosing. Like, I want to tell you that I'm in love with you again. I want to tell you this about my life. I want to be vulnerable right here. And I just kept backing up on those little pieces. And before you know it, you don't share.
Hmm.
And it's not like we don't talk. We do talk. We do have weekly meetings. We're spending time together. We never argue. We never fight. It's not like we're like on the rocks, nothing like that. But that really deep, vulnerable, like scary place where it's like you have my heart and my emotions, I've
Hmm.
kept at bay.
Mm. Wow. I think what's kind of funny that you brought vulnerability up because me and my cousin were talking about it. I love being vulnerable with people.
Do
One of
you
my biggest
really?
pet,
Oh
yes,
my gosh.
one of my biggest pet peeves is when you ask someone how they're doing, like, I'm good. I'm like, you liar.
Mm,
Tell me how you're really doing.
yeah.
And so of course, in like when you're in the hustle bustle of life and when you're at work, that's like the only answer you really hear. Like if you ask anyone how they're doing, they
Mm,
say they're good. But it's like, how are you really doing? Like
mm-hmm,
honestly, like tell me the
mm-hmm,
crap you're going through right now. And I'm not saying everyone's going through uh a crap, but I'm just saying like people are having the best time in their life right now. Some people are miserable. Some people are just they're growing and they're just kind of like in this weird like, new year, new me, going to the gym, but I don't really want to. I don't know. So
okay.
it's like I really enjoy like asking people how they are because I genuinely care. I'm
Mm,
not the kind of person who asks because I want to give advice. I genuinely just want to ask because I just care. I want to know how people are doing. Um, and I just don't like when people are like, dude, the Lord is being so good, man. Like everything's so good. Like praise
mm,
God, man. But like when they're at home, they're like, I'm freaking miserable, And
mm.
so, and it's like, I
Have
asked
you
you, but
have you ever
so.
felt like no, it's fine. I just like I used to ask people how they were doing all the time, and obviously you get the same answer. Everybody says good. It's I don't know if I've ever had maybe two people in my whole life that would be like, oh man, it's kind of a crap day, and be like, oh, totally get it. But do you feel like maybe we're asking at the wrong time? Like our expectation is that out at the coffee shop they're gonna bare their heart at the table. They're like, how are you doing? And they're like, well, nah, it's been really rough. Like maybe that's not the time. Like I guess what I'm trying to say is I backed up from thinking that I wanted people to be honest on how are you because it was wrong time, wrong place. Like what
Yeah, I
I'm
think that's
saying
good.
is bury your soul in a place that you're not comfortable because I think honesty is better. I just I guess I devolved how are you? I wanted it to be a really cool moment, but really what it ended up being is just a hey. And I think if everybody receives it as a hey, maybe I'm not asking in the right places. And so I don't know if that would help you at all, but
Yeah, that's
I had
good.
the same thought and the same feeling about how are you?
Yeah. Something that you were really good at is whenever we were on go together, we'd sit at the table. And I remember you were like, Brandon, how are you?
Oh, really?
And I could just see it in your eyes. It wasn't like, oh, I'm great. It was like, no, Brandon, like, how are you? And so you just kind of opened the door of like where I felt safe. And of
Mm,
course, like you have to like read the room too. Like when I
that's a good
first
way to say it.
when I first got the job, it's like if you don't really have a relationship with someone, I don't really expect them to open up to you, right? Like it's like your first day at work. It's like, how are you? Oh, I'm great. Um, but two, it's like it's of course when I'm at work and I ask how my boss is doing, of course she's probably gonna say that she's great,
Mm.
because she's at work and she's not gonna pour out her life.
And are
Um,
you the right person?
right, exactly.
Is
And
that what you're? Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so it's like, and like, am I the right person, like you said, to share this kind of thing with? Um, but and two, what's so funny when it comes to guy vulnerability and being vulnerable with another guy, I find it so awkward. For example, I don't think
Yeah.
he'll mind me sharing this, but me and my buddy Sean, um, this was like 2 years ago, and he came over to the dorms and he's like, "Bro, I just want to let you know that I love you and I view you as one of my bestest friends. And that conversation was so hard for me to have and so awkward
Mm,
for me because, and I don't know if it's because it was the way I thought I was raised. I don't know if it's just with all dudes, it's just weird. But it's like me telling another dude that I loved him was just weird. Not like 'cause it was
mm,
like, oh, this is gay, but it's like I didn't know, like it felt weird being vulnerable to another guy.
mm,
And so me sharing my heart to Sean and be like, bro, like I feel the same way. I love you too. You're like my best friend. It was really hard for me to have. And like whenever he left, I was like, that just happened. And that was pretty cool. Really hard discussion to have for me. But of course with my wife being vulnerable is a little bit easier.
hmm.
Um, yeah.
Did you get that from your dad? Would he
I don't
ever
know.
tell you he loved you and stuff?
Um, I don't really remember. So
Okay.
if I don't remember, maybe not. My dad was pretty cool. So I don't know if a lot of people know my situation. I have a stepdad and a biological father. So when my dad was in town, I remember him being super lovey. I remember we were at a water park, and people might think this is weird. He's my dad, and I was like, this doesn't freak me out. But he had like his arm around me. He would tell me that he loved him a lot, and it's like, oh, like cool. This is my dad, of course.
Mm,
My stepdad, he wasn't really like that. Um, he's really more closed off. Just his personality. It wasn't like he didn't love me. It's just like he was
yeah.
just a closed off individual. So I don't know if it's just a lack of hearing it from another man.
Mm.
But yeah, when it comes to man on man vulnerability, like being real with another dude, it's so weird for me. It's so hard. Like honestly, like I would rather
Yeah.
not do that. You know?
Yeah, no. So like I say that because with my family, um, my mom only spoke good things about me and she loved me unconditionally. This turned me
Mhm.
into like the perfect vessel for picking up women when I was in my 15, 16, 17, 18, all the way up to 24. I
Yeah.
never thought there was a woman that wouldn't like me. And I never felt insecure if they didn't like me because of how much love I had received from my
Mm.
mother. Like if some girl rejected me most of the time, I'm just like, oh, whatever. If a girl fell in love with me, it meant nothing to me. I was just like, oh, cool, yeah, like I've been here before, like I'm great, there's
Yeah.
no reason you wouldn't. But with my dad, rarely did he ever say, I'm proud of you or great job or you're just absolutely killing it. So I remember one time he like complimented me on something. I held on to that thing. I was like, oh man, this feels good. This is what I want. And that vacuum for male like a guy just building in strength into my life and like I feel so confident around women. I feel absolutely 100% like it's the easiest thing in the whole world, but when it comes to guys, there's just this like void what I don't know, it's just weird. I guess what you don't receive is what you're not necessarily, at least for me, what I wasn't necessarily great at giving or receiving on that. And for some reason it turned to a sex thing instead of like a just across the board. So that's the reason I asked, because I've noticed in my own life,
Yeah.
like, please.
I don't even know too, like with my um I talked to one of my pastors not too long. When I say not too long ago, I mean like years ago. And I told him like when a girl likes me, I freak out. I'm like, what?
Mm,
She likes me? And so I don't know, like, because you said you didn't really care for her like to, but with
mm-mm,
me, um, I would really freak out and I would literally drop everything because I had a girl's attention. And I don't
yep,
know if that's a lack of affection from my mom. I don't know if that's like what my mom did was fine, and that's just something that I just had in my mind. Plus, I did have a girl issue, like my high school and young adult years. Like when it came to girls, I just wasn't healthy.
mm.
Yeah,
You're preaching to the choir, dude. Oh my gosh, did I mess up some relationships, dude? What's crazy? I messed up some people. Now, that's
yeah,
even a bigger conversation, but
yeah.
that your life, like, this is like a side note, but sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, please.
No, no, I'm done. Go ahead.
Basically, like, I was thinking last night, I was just laying in bed, I couldn't sleep, and I was like, if I had to get on a Twitter space or a podcast and like talk about like issues with somebody, if somebody was like, what was the biggest thing you've learned in your life? What would you say? And outside of, things with the Lord, this is the biggest lesson I ever learned, hands down. And I learned it the really hard way. Um, you can either be people's biggest trial or you can be their biggest blessing, depending on how you act.
Mm.
And you're going to have to choose in life on whether or not you're going to let people grow on you, because they will. They will fail you. They will come short. They will do all these things. And you're going to have to make a conscious choice whether you should separate from that relationship or you're willing to let them fail on you. And I say this because I learned it because I destroyed a girl's life. I mean, I destroyed her life. And people are probably thinking like, oh, it's a little bit of a hyperbole, but like if people don't know my past, I was a heroin addict for 2 years. Before that, I was a pillhead. And I did 6 years of drugs, from marijuana all the way to very hard drugs. I mean, you can't get much harder than heroin. So I say this all to say, I started dating this girl, and then while I'm dating her, I move in a week later, and then I start talking to another girl. I'm talking to another girl, but then going back to this girl, and just I'm messing with her heart while we're on hard drugs and doing all this stuff, and just cheating on her, devaluing her, and then bringing value back to her, and I just totally I remember I just wrecked her psyche. I remember it just got between the drugs and all the LSD and all this stuff that happened and just cheating on her and doing all that stuff. She just got messed up. And I know that I played the biggest part in that role of really messing her up. And whether or not it was me or somebody else, I'm not trying to say that, I'm the eternal doorpost for killing people or like messing their lives up. But I realized in that moment, I was like, you know what, people have the capacity to really, really hurt and screw people up. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
And you don't want to learn it that way. You definitely don't want to learn it by messing people up like really bad. But I did, and I messed up girls' lives really, really bad. And I messed with them all the time. And I cheated on most of my girlfriends in the past. And it messes with them. It messes with their value system. It messes with how they perceive themselves. Whether, people can say they're the most magnanimous and, oh, it doesn't hurt me people in the whole world. But I find that most of the time, people are actually, they care way more than they let on. And they get hurt way more than they let on.
Yeah.
And so no, that's kind of segueing from the girl
That's
thing,
good.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Can we do a part 3 or you don't have time?
Yes. Well,
Cool.
Let me see.
Okay. Double check.
I have a meeting at 12:30. If it's a shorter, like a 20-minute.
Yeah. Let's do 20 minutes. Well, let me just close out real quick and then we'll start with 3. Well, thank you for listening. I wanted to do a part 3 because I wanted to continue this conversation. You can now listen to Sip&Awe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and you can watch on YouTube. Buy me a cup of coffee. Give it up for Charles Menke. All right, y'all. We will see you next week.